welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I'm a wizard!
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, which released in 1987. With a story by Wes Craven and Bruce Wagner, a screenplay by Frank Darabont, and directed by Chuck Russell. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Well, the story follows Patricia Arquette's character, Kristen. She is suffering from dreams brought on by a hideous man in a hat, and she has been institutionalized. There she will meet Nancy, played by Heather Langenkamp, and the two of them will team up and try to defeat Freddy once and for all.
Okay, group's in session. Straight talk only in this room.
So, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 released and was a massive commercial success.
Yes.
Made them a lot of money. However, the reviews were pretty damning.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people actually liked the film. So the studio, New Line Cinema, were like, well, we need to figure out where we're going to take this forward because we're taking this forward.
Yes.
How about we get hold of Wes Craven and see if he might be interested in coming back? Wes Craven was like, actually, yes, I will, because now that you've franchised this thing and I'm not getting any royalties, so I'd like a percentage of the Freddy money, and I will write a script.
Yeah.
And he wrote a script. And New Line Cinema were aware of how ambitious this script was, and they weren't really keen on it. And that was when Frank Darabont and Chuck Russell pitched an idea to New Line Cinema, expanding upon what Wes Craven had wrote.
Yeah.
And the studio were so excited about this team that they dumped Wes Craven almost immediately in favor of Frank Darabont's pitch.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Wes Craven wasn't communicated with or talked to at this point. He was a little bit sour about it. He had an executive producer credit as well.
Yeah.
But he thought he would help oversee the project or get called, be brought in to oversee certain ideas or story direction the film was taking.
Yeah.
But he was never contacted again. New Line was so happy with their new setup, and their explanation for it was that Wes Craven's script was too dark. It took Freddy Krueger in a direction they weren't quite happy with, making him much more vulgar, especially in his swearing.
Yeah.
He used the C word a lot. He promised to defecate on their corpses, and etc.
Didn't he also write it kind of like what New Nightmare would be in the future?
Those ideas were there, yes.
Yeah, Freddy was going to be coming out into the real world. He was going to be interacting with real people, and they were like, look, this is fucking, 1987? It's too early. We want some pop culture references. We want kind of Freddy like what Jason's doing, chasing teens and just slashing people up.
They wanted to just make sure that Freddy also maintained his integrity of being a scary killer.
Yeah.
During the production of the third film, the studio were getting very antsy about the comical undertones that were coming through in this film, which Chuck Russell explained, like, if we're going to continue this franchise forward, you can't just keep doing the same thing. You have to kind of play on it a little bit. And so, for me, this film does strike that balance of comedy and horror, and it doesn't tip one way or the other too much.
Yeah.
But the studio, obviously, were very excited when the film was finished and they got to see the final piece, but as the film was being made, they were just like, we don't know how this Freddy's going to be perceived, especially after the backlash of the second one.
Yeah.
The main thing they wanted to focus on was doing like what the first one was, which is having Freddy killing teens in their dreams, unlike the haunted house possession movie that the second one kind of became.
Yeah.
Now, it's also been said that even though there was a bit of a gap between 2 and 3, not much.
Yeah.
The third film was rushed, and all of the actors that worked on the third film said that it was the most stressful film that they'd ever worked on.
Really?
In terms of being on set. Chuck Russell, it was also his first time directing.
Oh, okay.
Patricia Arquette, her first time on any film set, her breakout role here.
Wow.
But there were, sometimes up to 50 takes to get a take right. Special effects were running behind, even though a lot of the crew were also upset because the special effects department got all the budget, which meant other things weren't quite working. And there was a lot of people blaming other people for the reasons why they were falling behind. But despite all of the stress and the tensions and everything running high, they've churned out what could possibly be one of the best horror sequels ever made.
I think that's a bit of a push, maybe. And this is only my own personal opinion. Coming off the back of the second one, which I think has got a hell of a lot more darker tone. We've still kind of got that demonic Freddy Krueger from the first movie, that he's a proper child killer. In this one, I get what they're trying to do, but then I don't understand like why it happens and everybody just kind of ignores it. But like we'll start off with the story. I mean, we start off with Patricia Arquette. You know, she is trying to stay awake as much as she can, and she's building the house from her dreams. You know, we obviously immediately recognize, if we've been watching the series, see it as Nancy's house. And it took me back, we're seeing it in this one, of what you said for in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, is that they wanted to make the house iconic. You know, it kind of works. It's like Crystal Lake for Jason. You know, this house, whenever you see this house, oh shit, there's a guy with a glove nearby.
Well, I mean, it goes back again to like Wes's original script, which had dream warriors from across America all traveling to this Elm Street, because that's where they're having these dreams. They're being pulled into Freddy's dream. Now they're trapped. They need to go and find the location that's calling them, which was going to be the house.
Yeah, but we see, you know, young Patricia Arquette there. We've got to say off the bat, Kristen is very special as a character. You know, unlike Nancy from the first one, who she was your strong female teen that managed to survive to the end. Kristen is now going to be a pivotal point for the next 4 movies, for 3 or 4 movies, where her character can actually pull people into her dreams. But we don't know that just yet. We have her waking up outside the house, inside a nightmare, and Freddy is luring her in. You know, he's got this little girl on the bike, creepy as fuck.
Well, I love the whole dreamscape, the house, all of the children out the front skipping the rope, playing all victims of Freddy, and her going down the stairs into the boiler room, the girl coming out on the tricycle, and the furnace lighting up the boiler, and her just turning to Kristen going, Freddy's home.
Freddy's home.
She's like, oh shit. She grabs the girl, who somehow turns into like a doll, and she goes running around the house with her. And
she gets caught in the tar. Now, as Kristen gets caught in the tar, my question is Freddy purposely slowing her down so that her fear grows, so then he becomes more powerful? Of
course.
To then let her go, so then he can feed on her more, because she gets away and she actually does wake up. Now, like I said in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, it was the end of the gory kills. Now, Freddy is trying to kill children but make it look like suicides.
Kind of, in a way, yeah. I mean, I'm guessing, like, when people wake up, or when they don't wake up, when they're discovered their bodies in a mutilated mess, or whether they're unscathed, or...
Well, this is it, but like I go back to the first movie with Glenn. Glenn got pulled into his bed and exploded into a blood fountain. That's not suicide.
Yeah, but we never actually see his body. Now, there was a deleted scene though where Glenn's body comes up out of the bed and just slumps over it, like unmarked.
True. You know, but like it's the same in the second one. Like Grady definitely wasn't a suicide,
right?
You know, like you don't do that, and it does happen a couple of times in this. But she kind of wakes up, goes to the bathroom, and you get that amazing body horror.
Yeah, well, it's the dream inside a dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where she turns the taps and you see, like, I don't know, these tendons. It's definitely Freddy's arm.
Yes,
the same kind of skin tone or burnt skin, and then she ends up. Freddy ends up slicing her wrist, and when the mum opens the door, Kristen's there with a razor in her hand. So yeah, it looks like it's being set up as suicide. But I mean, that's not Freddy Krueger's MO, right? He wants people to know that Freddy did it, so that they become. It passes on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a little bit weird, but it was. I think it was kind of like the subtext of the original script, maybe, where, you know, they wanted to bring up teen suicide and how bad it is, and parents that weren't quite understanding their children or believing them or being supportive of them. You know, there's that whole thing about the parents not understanding the kids throughout the franchise.
Yes, this was what I got with the franchise as well, especially when we got to the third movie, that unlike, like we said, the Friday the 13th, teens weren't going out to some area and being killed by some nameless killer. This is Freddy Krueger. He's a child killer, but you could never just keep the story focused on that dark aspect. You had to take the story into a lighter district to keep the franchise going. So then when we get Kristen going to the hospital, And we're introduced to Dr. Neil Gordon, played by Craig Wasson, who's investigating all these teen suicides as well. You know, we're still kind of fresh in the story that in Springwood, you know, the teens are dying at Freddy's hands, but he's making them look like suicides. So nobody really knows it's Freddy, except these ones in this mental hospital. We've got Kincaid, Will, Philip, and Taryn, and they all have these dreams where Freddy is chasing them. But doctors and nurses there just think that they've got lack of sleep, and so they just need a good night's sleep, and then they'll wake up tomorrow and they'll be feeling okay.
Yeah, you definitely get a sense that the authorities or the powers that be are doing the best that they can.
Yeah.
But completely failing these kids at the same time. Now, all of the kids understand they're all having the same nightmare about the same gloved killer coming after them, but the adults obviously don't believe them. You know, you'd think that the staff would understand that these kids don't want to be sedated. They don't want to sleep. And so when Kristen kicks up a fuss, you know, lashing out at these doctors, and then starts singing, you know, the nursery rhyme.
Yeah.
And that is when Nancy makes her appearance and finishes the song, which immediately Patricia Arquette's character, Kristen, she knows what's going on, and there's an immediate bond there.
Yeah, really did love this introduction. I remember the first time seeing this, where, like I said, the first time I'd seen number 2, I was like, this is amazing. Everyone said it sucked. I had to go back and watch the first one. I thought, wow, this is amazing. I love the first and second one. And then coming back into the third one, seeing Nancy turn up, I'm like, man, this is going to get fucking awesome. You know, we've got the original. This is like Ripley coming back in Aliens to obviously face the monster all over again. So how's this going to go down? And then with the introduction of Kristen, that you get this idea that these two have this plan. They're going to get together and they're going to capture Freddy, but still you've got the kind of I don't know, the science behind it, because Nancy sleeps, but she doesn't dream. She takes
Hypnosil, which was a dream suppressant. So she's managed to survive. I guess she still had nightmares, you know, after the events of the first film, but she took this drug to stop dreaming, essentially, to protect herself in case Freddy would turn up in her dreams again.
I mean, you completely ignore the question of how the hell did she survive the ending of the first one. You just accept that somehow she left and she went off. But I also like the fact that in the series they ignore but don't ignore the second movie. You know, they ignore that anything like that ever happened, but they just go, oh yeah, it was 6 years ago that Nancy had her thing. Remember, it was 5 years ago in the second movie.
That's right, yeah. But it also explains that she's been off to college or university. She's got a degree or a diploma in I don't know, child psychology or dream
sleep
therapy.
psychology and all these different things. She studied all these things. I think she's also tried to stay away from just Freddy.
Yes,
you know, as long as the further away from Springwood she can be, the safer she is, so that he can't kill her or something. I do want to bring up now, like, Lawrence Fishburne.
Sorry, Larry Fishburne.
Larry Fishburne, sorry, yeah, Morpheus, or Maximus as he is in this movie. He's just a no-name kind of, like, hospital warden.
Yeah.
I love the fact that he's such a great, massive actor in this, you know, small horror movie. But he interacts with nothing. He doesn't fight Freddy.
No, but he's there for the kids. You can tell that he really cares for them and the job that he's doing.
Yeah,
he's also the nice orderly, you know.
That's it. But he's such a good character that he kind of gives the story some kind of, you know, some backbone. But he doesn't do anything.
Not really, no. Well, we get into one of my favourite dream parts of the film, where Kristen is now in the hospital, and for me it's the escalation of the nightmare, where it starts with the door creaking open.
Oh yeah.
The tricycle coming in, leaving a trail of blood behind it before it starts to melt. Then she ends up inside her model house.
Yeah.
And after a little bit of wandering around, she walks into the dining room, and there's the cooked pig on the table, which squeals at her. Now, apparently, in the behind the scenes, like in a bit of a rush, they used a real pig. They cooked it so that it would, and then they put it on the set, and then they got the animatronics in there to do the head. But by the time they were doing that, this thing had rotted, and it stank. And the people that worked on this said they can still smell that dead pig. Yeah, it's good turned them vegetarian after
God,
working on this sequence. But it's the sequence that follows where, from out of nowhere, this phallic Freddy head pops up out of the ground
Yeah.
and starts to slowly devour Kristen. Now, I think this is one of my favourite effects in the entire franchise. The puppeteering work in it is fantastic. And just again, a small bit of trivia for you is that when the snake is actually devouring Kristen, it's shot in reverse because they couldn't get the puppet to do it.
Oh, wow.
So she's actually already in there and moving out in reality, and then filmed backwards.
That's awesome.
But she starts screaming for Nancy
Yeah.
while she's in the dream. And this is another really effective effect where Nancy sits in the chair and falls right into the dream.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, the way they did that effect was that the chair actually had a slit all the way through it, so that if you sat in it, you would just fall right through the back.
Nice.
And through a hole in the floor behind the chair, so it's a really great shot. But Nancy is now in the dream, and Freddy Krueger remembers her.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I love this sequence as well because, you know, it just brings, like I said, the Nancy and Kristen character together. Now they've got this creature that they've got to fight. Nancy's just kind of completely shook. She's like, have you ever done that before? And Kristen kind of lets her in like, oh yeah, when I used to have nightmares when I was a kid, I'd bring my dad into the dreams as well. But after mum and dad have split up, like I was worried like maybe dad had been killed by Freddy, but she's like, no, we divorced and dad's just moved away. So she's just been completely left on her own. And so
I do like the fact that we do get some hints, because we saw Kristen with her mother at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
And according to the actress, she plays the part guilt-ridden that she had torched and murdered Freddy Krueger years ago.
Oh,
and
yes,
so
yes.
you find that with all the parents that we do see in the Elm Street movies, that they're carrying the guilt of the fact that they killed Freddy and they're trying to still cover it up. And most of them end up drinking.
Yeah, yeah. And Nancy decides that obviously if she can use this ability to help the other children, then maybe they would all be able to get some strength to be able to fight against Freddy. But at the same time, we've also got Neil Gordon, who's walking around talking to this scary-looking white nun, you know, well, at first we get told it's Sister Helena is her name, but we will actually come to know her as Amanda Krueger, Freddy Krueger's mother. Now, I thought this was just, you know, this was just the perfect way to keep the franchise going as well. Because, like I said, with Friday the 13th, we'd already, in the first movie, been introduced to Jason's mother. You know, had the whole scenario with her. And now we've got Jason coming around seeking revenge. With Freddy, we had got no backstory from him in 3 movies other than he'd been killed by parents after he was, you know, doing nefarious things to their children. So the idea of him actually having some parents and it being explained to you, like, I thought that was a great way for the series to go. I don't like the way it went because they just didn't give it enough money, they didn't give it enough forethought, they just kind of threw something together. But at least in this movie we have the start of it, and if you're paying well enough attention, this nun is just so scary.
I don't know, she's just floating around, you know?
Floating around, mate. She's appearing and disappearing like she hasn't got a care in the world.
Yeah.
And Neil Gordon's just like, oh yeah, nothing's going on.
You think there might be something wrong here? Because all the time he's like, I'm a man of science. And she's like, well, if you're a man of science, then maybe you who will be being laid to rest.
Yes.
So like, oh, I got to get religious. Now let's get to one of the most frightening and for me pretty gory and nasty kills in the film, and that is Philip.
Yes.
We get introduced to him a little bit earlier. We see that he's creating these marionettes, these puppets, and while he's asleep, Freddy inhabits one of these marionettes, and it's a cool effect as we watch the transition as Freddy kind of takes over the skin of it.
Yes.
Releases himself and then grows full size in front of him.
Yeah. Now, so I like to think that Kristen brought Freddy into the hospital, possibly with her. I mean, it's an idea. Like I know he was kind of always there.
He was,
but,
yeah.
Freddy just kind of attacking Philip. It just seems like such a crazy idea because once he's sliced him with the veins, and he's pulled him out of the bed, which is such a gory effect. But you don't actually see it in the real world. He's just walking, and it's like we'd already seen that some of the children are kind of on watch with each other. They're trying to stay awake as long as they can, but as any night terrors, one of them is awake to wake the other one up. Kincaid kind of just ignores this rule with Philip and just goes, off you go, mate, have a nice walk.
Oh no, it's like, Kincaid, you jerk.
You fucking jerk, yeah. And
now, there is a bit here which it's unexplainable, really.
The door sequence?
The fact that he just floats right through the door, and it's like, now, is Freddy that powerful that he can manipulate the real world as we've seen him do in the past? Because Philip is asleep, is Freddy able to just defy physics?
I want to say yes, because he's Freddy Krueger and he's got some magical powers. But yeah, it's another stepping point for me because it brings me back to the whole suicide thing. You know, Freddy's got this... He's got the opportunity to kill this kid wherever and use his body to scare the rest of them. But instead, what he does is he sneaks the boy off to a point where he can show it to all of them in a fine display. But nobody can see Freddy. Oh, the only person who can see Freddy up in the night sky is Philip. The kids can see Philip, but it was the idea as well that, like I said, it's not a gory death. He just throws him off this rooftop.
Yeah, but it's the gore that occurred to him before getting there.
Yeah, nobody else can
tendons
see.
ripped out.
yeah. Great special effect to kind of walk him around. But like I said, it's the same when we get Jennifer's death as well. Jennifer is another actress who's trying to stay awake, and she's watching TV. She's using cigarettes to burn herself to keep herself awake. And she gets a malfunction with the TV after, obviously, she's kind of slightly fallen asleep. When she gets close to the TV... Another great special effect, you know, arms sprout from the side of the TV. Freddy's head just kind of appears out of the top with antenna on top of his head. He says just the immortal line, "The prime time, bitch." And then he slams her head through the screen. And Larry Fishburne comes in and goes, "Oh, clearly a suicide."
Right? No, I think it is perhaps the greatest, my personal favourite kill in the entire franchise. It is so good. Now, the Welcome to Primetime bitch wasn't even in the script in any version. That was just purely Robert Englund, who, like I said many times, now inhabited the role. He knew Freddy Krueger better than any script writer could, and just knew when to ad-lib, when to improvise, and when to make a quote or a moment in the film stand out so much that it's elevated everything around it. Just a perfect execution. And so, yeah, that's another Dream Warrior down.
Well, these two didn't really have any powers, because we get the group therapy lesson with Nancy, where she sits down our main group, and they all explain, you know, Kincaid says, "Hey, in my dream, I'm a super strong man," and he breaks a chair. You know, Taryn goes, in my dream, I'm beautiful, but I've got daggers. And it's like, okay, you know, Will can stand. He's got magical powers. You've got Joey as well, who's a mute kid. And he's not said anything throughout the most of the movie. And then he gets lured off at this sequence. And Freddy uses this nurse as a disguise to lure Joey to a bed. And then while making out with him, shoots his or her tongue into the corner post so that Joey is tied to the bed over what appears to be hell.
Right. Yeah, it's one giant wormhole. Yeah. Now, apparently, they tried a few different things here. You know, they were experimenting, really, with this effect. And originally, they were going to have Krueger top half, and then busty, naked nurse underneath, talking with Freddy's voice.
Yeah.
But when they shot it, they were just like, this is really not working. It's confusing seeing a busty Freddy Krueger. So let's just go with the nurse until it's all Freddy afterwards. Like, the in-between just didn't quite work.
Yeah, I do like that cutaway where you don't actually need to see it. The camera just does the work where Freddy's there. But Nancy and the group, they wake up after having a little bit of a run-in. And the head doctor...
Dr. Sims.
Yeah, Dr. Sims. She sees the group and she realizes there's something wrong with Joey. And then, the same, like we said, Freddy must be able to manipulate the real world because he's able to cut a message into Joey's flesh from the dream.
Well,
for them to see
he's
it.
probably carving it in Joey in the dream.
Yeah,
which
but-
is affecting his body in the real world, just like we saw with Tina at the beginning.
Yeah,
of
but
the
that's
first film.
what I'm saying. In a dream, maybe he walked Philip through an open door.
Yes,
So
yeah.
in the real world, he just walked through it like it was nothing. I
yeah.
don't know. It's magic. It's all
Yeah.
magic.
So this is where now we get really the science versus the supernatural.
Yeah.
As Dr. Sims is just like, this is what you've done with Joey. He's in a coma. She calls in one of the executive board. It's just like, you're fired. I want you out of here today.
Yeah.
All of these kids, I want them sedated and locked in their rooms tonight. You know, we get that sequence where Kristen's just like, you stupid bitch, you're killing us.
Yeah.
You're killing us. You know, and you give props to the actress playing Dr. Sims because, like, she is a villain in the film.
Yeah.
But it's because we know what's really going on, and she's just doing everything by the book. She really does care for these kids, but she's killing them.
But that's the thing. That's where, for me as well, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 kind of runs the tightrope of going from being silly and serious. You know, we've got this scientist who, you know, is seeing all this evidence, which is completely unexplainable about how this is all happening. But that, you know, it's fine. Just sedate these children. But then, on the other hand, you've got like Patricia Arquette, who is trying her best to be the new Scream Queen.
You stupid bitch! You're killing! You're killing
She screams a lot in
She
this film.
screams a lot, and some of it really just doesn't work. And so that, like, when you have her locked up, she can't be locked up in a room on her own because Freddy's gonna kill her. And it's just like, Freddy's not killed her throughout this whole entire movie. He's had untold chances to kill her, and he's not bothered. He's just fucked off. But Nancy decides that she's going to get the group together and going on a rescue dream mission for Kristen.
Well, before that,
Yeah.
she catches up with Neil, who explains that Amanda, or this nun, has told him that he needs to lay the bones to rest of the killer, which is Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
And Nancy's like, well, there's only one man I know who will know where the remains are. And she has to go and find her dad.
Oh,
And
yes.
John Saxon reprising the role
Yes.
of Lieutenant Thompson. Although now he's no longer a lieutenant. He's no longer in the force. He's now just a washed up security guard.
Yeah.
Drinking away his problems. Completely out of it. And even Nancy can't convince him to relive the horror of his guilt. She gets sent off to go and save Kristen, while Neil's just like, I'll deal with your dad. I'll go and talk to him. And, you know, I'm like, John Saxon's a pretty intimidating dude.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And the way he knocks over the table and pushes John Saxon up against the wall, I was just like, if this was any other movie, like, John Saxon would kill you. But he does convince him.
Yeah,
He
see,
does
I'd
convince him.
also read as well that, like, while in development, John Saxon and Robert Englund had both put scripts into the movie of different ideas that they wanted to go for.
Yeah.
You know, and John Saxon was looking for, like, a more of a redemption story for his
What-
his cop character.
He
for
wanted to
coming
do
back.
a prequel.
Yeah, but it's kind of difficult to believe for me that a lot of these adults are just completely against. You know, you've been seeing kids die for 6 years. An untold number of children have fucking died over the last 6 years, and none of the adults believe. They know they've killed Freddy Krueger. They know he had a bladed glove. They've seen evidence of children being slashed up by a razored gloved killer, but they will not believe that it could be Freddy Krueger, who they burnt themselves. And no, the one of my major issues with the Nightmare on Elm Street series is just how they will forget things that have happened in previous movies. But here, yes, Neo says to John, like, look, we're going to go find this corpse. And so they head out to the junkyard, and John Saxon kind of points to this red Cadillac and says, yep, the bones are in there.
So, damn, the bones are in the back of Christine.
yeah. And we're coming back to Nancy, who's got the rest of the Dream Warriors together, and they're getting ready to go inside to rescue Kristen. And they do get to her room, but then they all get separated, don't they?
Yes, yeah. It's This is where we now just tick off the Dream Warriors as they have their one-on-one confrontations with Freddy. First up is Kristen, who ends up being chased by Freddy, but we have the mum flashback. Like, if you're
amazing.
first time watching this film,
Yeah.
you'll think that the DVD is skipped. Like, if you're watching on VHS, you're fine. Right? But if you're watching on DVD, you're like, oh, the film's skipped, because it replays the entire beginning scene again, right up until her getting into bed, right up until Freddy killing and decapitating her mother.
Yeah, I love that bit.
It is great.
I said, where's the fucking bourbon?
Great moment. And yeah, so Kristen jumps through the window, so she escapes. But then we pick up with our wizard master,
Yeah.
Will. He ends up having to dodge this giant wheelchair
Yeah.
with spikes on it, and
I don't really understand the point of these Dream Warriors. It was like, the first time I watched this movie, I'm like, oh my god, we're going to get this team together to fight Freddy. And then when they get into the fight sequences, they are useless. I mean, Freddy just basically looks at Will and goes, you're a cripple. You are disabled. You have no power here. This is my world. I knew this. And Freddy's been telling me for at least 3 movies that he is the one in charge here. Your magical powers don't work. I mean, you do get a little bit of hope when he kind of bashes his hands and he raises up and he's like running at Freddy like, ah!
he blows up the chair, he runs at Freddy.
And
But Freddy don't believe in fairy tales.
Yeah, and he just stabs him. But it's the same with Taran as well. We cut to Taran. Taran is in this dirty, grimy alleyway.
Freddy's haunting her with her past, her drug
Yeah,
past.
there's been this whole thing that she's been taking drugs and she's probably been abused by men in her past. And I don't like the whole idea of the movie going, oh yeah, it's all fine, it's just part of her backstory. I'm like, no, this is some serious stuff. And then when she comes across Freddy, she pulls out 2 daggers. They have a bit of a knife fight and Freddy goes, look, I've got drugs. And you look at her arms, you get those little suckers on her arms, and she literally just gives up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like the haunted by her past, overcome by the...
It just feels like both those characters, Freddy was just OP.
Yeah,
because they had to be killed off because of the story.
Well, it is explained. I mean, Nancy even says at one point later in the film that Freddy's more powerful than she remembers him being.
Yeah.
But that's because he's consumed a lot of souls. And we do see for the first time in the series, his chest or belly of souls, which is giving him strength.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was an unfinished effect here for Taran's death.
Okay.
Where we see the vein moving up her head,
Yeah.
and her head was supposed to explode and eyeballs pop out and everything, but the effect
much.
just wasn't quite finished or working when they were filming it, and it had to be scrapped and cut when it does. But Freddy's still going, let's get high. Still a great memorable death.
Well, this is it. This movie is the one that's most remembered because he's got so many good, one-liners in the movie after every time he makes a kill. And we get Kristen, Nancy, and Kincaid all getting together. I mean, spoilers, Kincaid will survive to the next movie.
He bursts through the wall and he's like, I thought I heard voices.
Yeah. It's the Nightmare on Elm Street way of saying, oh, we're not going to kill off the iconic black character like a lot of other people do. We're going to keep him alive.
We'll just kill him at the beginning of the next one.
Yeah, because we know that that's what the rules are now.
Fuck you!
But they make their way down into the boiler room to rescue Joey as well, who's still flowing across the hell mouth. And this is where they kind of have their one-on-one fight with Freddy. But Freddy is just so fucking powerful. He's in his realm. But while he's fighting them, John Saxon and Neil are messing with the bodies. And he senses this and goes back to the real world. The whole Harry Harrelson kind of stop-motion special effects skeleton moment.
Yeah, the team that did this skeleton effect were like, man, if we only had Ray Harryhausen here to help us do this effect, because we butchered this. It's like, he did this better than us, like, how many years ago?
Yeah.
30 years ago. But I love the Freddy skeleton. I think it's really fun.
Yeah.
I thought they animated it pretty well.
Yeah.
They tried to emulate Robert Englund's movements
Yes,
with it.
yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, he picks up John Saxon, throws him across the lot, and he gets impaled on the car, on the fender. I was like, damn, they killed off Lieutenant Thompson.
Yeah.
But still. And then the skeleton also beats up Neil and throws him into the shallow grave, and then half buries him before like, oh shit, I'm gonna get back into the dream world. He howls at the moon and then collapses again.
Yeah.
It's like, but I've always remembered that animated skeleton. I thought it was great.
The way he pulls the glove up as well, and he's just, he's just fighting with it, and like I said, he's doing little Freddy Krueger kind of motifs in the fight. And while he's distracted, our gang have rescued Joey, and as they're making their way through like a magical mirror corridor, Freddy grabs them all and starts pulling them all out, and it's all time for Joey's magical power to kind of come out, and he just screams no and breaks all the mirrors and rescues the team. Now, even I, at a very young age, after experiencing up to maybe 2-3 Freddy movies, knew that this wasn't over. You don't kill the killer off by screaming. So
No.
this whole ending sequence, I'm like, it's a trap! It's a trap! Run for your life!
And they run into the next room. John Saxon floats down from the heavens.
His spirit comes down and he lures Nancy in.
Angelic lighting, and
Yeah.
he's like, Nancy, I've passed over, but I just need to apologize for being a dick as a father for however many years.
Yeah, and as they're hugging, he turns into Freddy and he stabs Nancy right in the gut. I'm like, no! Because they haven't buried the bones yet. We cut back to Neil, who finds the bones. He pushes them into the grave with the last of his strength. He throws it with holy water. He starts to say the words. And Freddy and Kristen are fighting in the dream world. And Nancy comes back for one last fight, gets his glove, stabs it into Freddy. We see the damage from the holy water and the cross being put on the Freddy. It's such a really cool, dramatic fight sequence. But part of me, it's just so heartbroken on this, because I just know Nancy's just taken a mortal wound. And even when we watch Freddy's spirit kind of just like disappear off, you get Patricia Arquette kind of holding Heather Langenkamp, dreaming, screaming that she's going to dream her into a happy place.
I'm going to dream you into a beautiful dream.
Yeah.
Oh man, I cried so much first time watching this film.
I
I was
know.
like, no, not
No
Nancy.
way.
But I put it down to Patricia Arquette. Like, she came out of nowhere, first time actress.
Yeah.
She just nailed this part and really made you... Like she's the surrogate for the audience in terms of caring about Nancy as well.
Yeah.
So the way she delivers it's really effective. One of the highest emotional points, I think, again, in the entire franchise. It's really effective.
I mean, I don't understand. Like, I read somewhere that they were hoping to end the franchise here again.
That they absolutely...
And I'm like...
thought this was the end.
Well, at what point? Because at the end of this movie, I can understand that this is the end of the franchise by killing Heather Langenkamp off. But I've already seen Freddy come back twice. At the end of each one of the movies, I can assume he's coming back for a third time. But when we see... like the doctor get lured off by Sister Linda or Amanda Kruger, and he sees the grave. Neil sees the grave and goes, "Oh, you were Freddy's mother. You were the one who were raped by 1,000 maniacs over the course of 4 days. You're the one who brought him into this world." It's like, you're gonna end it there?
Well, I mean that. Yeah.
No, that's going to continue. That's a massive continuation. They might as well have written "to be continued" at the end of it.
Well, they did, because when Neil's asleep in his bed and he's got the model house there, Freddy turns the light on, like, Freddy's still home. Oh. But I mean, it still could have ended there. And now even Robert Englund was like, he was convinced that this would be the third one. He was like, I see this as a trilogy of movies, great to end on, but when they were getting towards the end of production, he was talking to New Line like, actually, I don't mind putting the makeup on. If you want to do more, I'll come back and do more.
Because it would have gotten easier as the years gone on to put the makeup on, and he doesn't need as many effects. I can kind of understand why they went with a cooler looking Freddy in the later movies, because it was just easier to slap the makeup on, Robert to do his line, instead of all the special effects of him falling off things and fighting things and whole sequences.
Yeah, I was kind of just satisfied with this ending, that it didn't end in another dream sequence like the previous film.
Yeah.
It felt like an ending to me. But what were your favourite scenes from the film?
Oh man, I like most of the Freddy stuff. Like if it's not a kill with him like being a puppeteer or slamming a girl's head into a TV, then it's the little moments with him like licking his tongue onto Joey's hands, onto the bed, or cutting off the mum's head and asking her, demanding where the bourbon is. You know, the fight sequence with Nancy and Kristen and Kincaid underneath with the fire sequence, and then obviously the skeleton coming up and fighting John Saxon and Neil. It just all of those moments, like the movie didn't need to really explain much story to me, because I already had 2 movies leading up to this point to garner the backstory of what was actually going on. I just needed to see Freddy kill people, and yeah, maybe he's not as gory in this one as I wanted him to be after the first 2 movies, but it's still cool. The giant worm, I mean, it's still cool.
Hell yeah, so many favourite scenes in this film. I love the little girl saying Freddy's home. I thought that was great. Great atmosphere. Now, there was an omitted effect here when she runs all the way back to the front door with the girl, and when she looks at it, it's like a skeleton child.
Yeah.
That effect was rushed together in 10 minutes. Whereas the guy that had worked on the original effect had spent like 10 days getting that effect ready, and when they got it on set, they went, that's too horrifying, we can't have it, let's just have a burnt skeleton instead.
Oh, damn.
It was basically, he had looked at World War II prison camp footage and made a really emaciated, skeletal, fleshy girl, and they were just like, no,
it's too horrible,
get rid of it. So they kind of knew really the tone that they wanted to set with the film.
Yeah.
What was too much and what was playfully dark and fun and still horrifying. But yeah, that whole dream sequence, great moments.
I gotta go now.
Wait, little girl, don't go in there!
I love Nancy falling into the dream with Kristen, the way she falls into the chair, the way she's confronted with this Freddy worm and then just immediately stabs him in the face.
Yeah.
Just like, yes, now it's on between these 2 rivals that have got a history. Great imaginative effects with that Freddy worm. I love the Philip puppet. I love the way his tendons are ripped off and the way that he walks like a puppet down the corridor. Great death sequence. I love the bit where Jennifer's watching TV and she's drifting off to sleep, and Freddy ends up possessing or becoming the host.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Who gives a fuck what you think?" And kills this woman on screen.
Sounds like a boy.
Yeah, so that was great. Love that line.
Can I ask you something?
Certainly.
Who gives a fuck what you think?
It's time for your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch. Really great quotes. Such an imaginative death. One of the best, if not the best, in the franchise. Come and get him, bitch. The way Freddy carves it in the flesh. Great visual moment. Really strong. Amanda giving the Freddy Krueger backstory and extending the mythology. I was like, that they're taking the story and they're moving it forward just a bit, just enough to give you something new and not completely destroying the mystery altogether. And of course, Skeleton Freddy. Like, watching that skeleton get animated, I was like, yes, it's just so fun. So fun. Well, Ian, do you recommend Nightmare on Elm Street 3?
I definitely recommend Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. After listening to my friend there list off all of his favourite sequences and thinking about the film myself, I think this is the pinnacle movie for the franchise. You know, it gradually gotten bigger and darker and more scary into it. Just got to a point where in the middle of the 80s, it hit pop culture references and just integrated itself into society and tried to take in as much information as it could to bring in as much of a big audience as it could to make everybody want to see this movie or this franchise or this character. And so it's just remembered so fondly. Yes, the series would diminish a little more as the movies would go on after this, but this is where it hit. You know, Robert Englund is just on top form. The special effects are on top form. The actors are just really great actors in their first couple of roles, you know, so they kind of elevate what would otherwise be a kind of mediocre story. I love the first one. I absolutely love the second one and absolutely love the third one.
Oh, hell yeah. This is getting my highest rating. It's an absolute must watch. I think it's the best Nightmare in the series. One of the best horror sequels ever made. It develops the mythology of Freddy Krueger, it integrates the previous cast in with the new very well, it maintains the horror, and takes the franchise to the next level, setting a benchmark for the rest of the films in the franchise. The whole cast was great. Patricia Arquette was wonderful in the lead role, and Robert Englund just excelled in the makeup. Frightening, menacing, and funny. The entire effects team worked its magic here. Great puppets, great gore, elaborate kills, awesome sets, brilliant makeup. The story is also great. The characters likable and relatable. Strong, foreboding atmosphere, great music score and reuse of the nightmare theme. The dream scenes were so imaginative and inventive, with great escalation and execution. It's easy to see why Freddy became a pop icon after this film. So many memorable scenes and one-liners. Freddy steals every scene, and it's fantastic. I really champion this film. Great horror effects, production, everything. It's the finest line of horror and comedy before the series dips one way and never really fully recovers. If you think you're ready for Freddy, think again. Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
All night long I sing this song. Ain't gonna dream.